What if I told you the reason you feel like a zombie every morning has nothing to do with how much you slept and everything to do with a transport protein sitting inside your small intestine that you have probably never heard of? For months, I was doing everything right. 8 hours in bed, no phone before sleep. And I would still wake up foggy, drag myself through the first 2 hours of my day, and hit a wall before 11 a.m. Then I started doing something that sounds almost as simple. A pinch of salt in a glass of water, first thing, before coffee, before anything else. Within a week, the fog was gone. This is not a wellness trend. It is a transporter called SGAT1, and once you understand what it actually does, you will never look at a glass of water the same way again. Here is the thing nobody explains properly. Do you wake up parched, even after a full 8 hours? Do you feel foggy for the first hour of your day, no matter what you do? Do you crash hard by mid-morning, reaching for coffee just to feel like a functioning human? That is not a caffeine problem. It is not even really a sleep problem. I spent 6 weeks testing this, tracking energy, mood, and afternoon crashes before and after changing one single habit. What I found lines up with decades of real physiology. The kind used to save children dying of dehydration in cholera wards, not the kind sold in a wellness ad. So let us get into what is actually happening inside your gut and your cells every single morning. That transporter I mentioned is called SGLT1, the sodium glucose-linked transporter, sitting along the brush border of your small intestine in the same tissue that absorbs everything you eat and drink. Here is what it actually does. It grabs a sodium ion and a glucose molecule at the exact same time and hauls them both across the intestinal wall together. Neither one moves well alone. But paired up, they create an osmotic gradient. And water follows that gradient into your bloodstream, fast. Plain water does not get this shortcut. It has to slowly diffuse across the intestinal wall on its own, at the mercy of whatever concentration gradient already exists. Add the right small amount of salt and a little sugar, and you are not just drinking water anymore. You are activating a transport system built specifically to move it. And that one mechanism, worked out almost by accident, has saved more human lives than most antibiotics ever have. In 1960, physiologist Robert Crane proposed something that seemed almost as simple to matter, that sodium and glucose move across the gut wall as a linked pair, not separately. About a decade later, during the cholera epidemic that swept through what is now Bangladesh, physician Dilip Mahalanobis used that exact principle out of desperation when intravenous fluids ran out in overcrowded treatment camps. He mixed salt, sugar, and water and had patients drink it instead. In the camps using that mixture, mortality from severe dehydration fell dramatically, from figures as high as 30% down to a small fraction of that. That formula became oral rehydration therapy. It is still the World Health Organization's frontline treatment for dehydration today. And the same sodium glucose transporter that saved those patients is sitting near your gut wall right now, every single morning, waiting for a reason to work. Which brings us to what is actually happening while you sleep. For 6 to 8 hours overnight, you are not drinking anything. But you are still losing water through every breath you exhale, through your skin, through basic metabolism. That is several hundred milliliters gone before your alarm even goes off. Your kidneys try to compensate. A hormone called vasopressin, released by your pituitary gland overnight, tells your kidneys to hold on to water and concentrate your urine so you lose less of it. That is the actual reason your first bathroom trip of the day looks darker than the rest. But vasopressin can only do so much. By morning, your blood volume is measurably lower than it was the night before, mildly dehydrated, before you have done anything wrong at all. And this is exactly where plain water starts working against you. Chug a large glass of plain water on an empty stomach, with no sodium alongside it, and you dilute the sodium concentration in your blood. Your kidneys sense that dilution fast, and they respond by producing more urine to correct it. So a good portion of that water leaves you again within the hour, without ever fully restoring what you lost overnight. Meanwhile, every single cell in your body is running a machine called the sodium-potassium pump. It pushes sodium out of your cells and potassium in, against their natural gradient, and it is expensive. This one pump alone can burn through roughly 20 to 30% of your resting energy just to keep that gradient maintained. That is not a minor detail. That pump is the reason your nerves can fire and your muscles can contract at all. Every thought you have, every muscle twitch, depends on sodium and potassium moving across a cell membrane in the right direction at the right moment. When your sodium is running low, that pump does not stop, but it has less raw material to work with, and your nervous system has to work harder to fire the same signals it normally fires without effort. That is a large part of what brain fog actually is at the cellular level. There is a second layer to this. Roughly 30 to 45 minutes after you wake up, your cortisol naturally spikes, sometimes by 50% or more. Researchers call it the cortisol awakening response, first mapped out in detail by psychologist Clemens Kirschbaum's lab in Dresden. And cortisol, it turns out, has a direct relationship with sodium. Cortisol can bind to the same kidney receptors that aldosterone uses to manage sodium retention. Your body's natural wake-up hormone surge is, in part, a sodium handling event, arriving right as you are mildly dehydrated, right as your sodium-potassium pumps need raw material to keep firing. So the full picture looks like this. You wake up in a mild fluid deficit. Your cortisol is surging and interacting with your sodium balance. Every cell in your body is running an expensive pump that depends on adequate sodium to function. And the fastest way to get water past your gut wall and into your bloodstream requires sodium paired with a little sugar, not water alone. That is the actual mechanism behind why a glass of salt water can change how you feel within 20 minutes. I tested this on myself for 6 weeks because I do not like taking claims like this at face value. Baseline. I tracked my energy on a simple 1 to 10 scale every morning and every afternoon for 2 weeks, no changes. My average morning score was a 4. By 10:30 a.m. most days, I was down to a 3, reaching for a second coffee just to function. Then I started drinking about 300 milliliters of water with a quarter teaspoon of salt and a small squeeze of orange juice for the glucose. First thing, before coffee, before food. By day 4, my 10:30 a.m. crash had mostly disappeared. By week 2, my average morning score was sitting closer to a 7, and I would cut my coffee intake from 2 cups before noon to 1. I also tracked urine color as a rough hydration marker, noticeably lighter by mid-morning, consistently, compared to my baseline weeks. Nothing about this replaced sleep or food, but it closed a gap I did not know I had. Let us break down exactly why this works, piece by piece. Reason number 1. Plain water and salt water do not hydrate you at the same speed, and that gap matters most first thing in the morning. Without sodium riding alongside it, water absorption across your intestinal wall depends on passive diffusion, slow, and largely at the mercy of whatever concentration gradient already exists. With the right small amount of sodium and a little sugar, you are activating that SGLT1 cotransport system directly, and water gets pulled across faster and in greater volume. Studies on oral rehydration formulas have consistently found that solutions combining sodium and glucose restore blood volume significantly faster than plain water alone, which is exactly why the WHO's rehydration formula still calls for both, not just water. Plain water on an empty stomach mostly passes through. Salt water gets absorbed. Reason number 2. Your blood volume overnight does not just affect how thirsty you feel. It affects how hard your heart has to work the moment you stand up. When plasma volume is low, baroreceptors in your carotid arteries and aortic arch sense the drop in pressure and signal your heart to beat faster and your blood vessels to constrict just to keep blood reaching your brain when you go from lying down to standing. That is a real physiological cost, and it is part of why some people feel briefly lightheaded getting out of bed. Restoring plasma volume quickly, which sodium helps you do, takes some of that load off your cardiovascular system before you have even left the bedroom. Less strain getting upright. More blood actually reaching your brain in those first few minutes. Reason number 3 goes back to that sodium-potassium pump running in every one of your cells. Nerve conduction depends on a clean, fast-resetting sodium gradient across the neuron's membrane. When that gradient is well maintained, action potentials fire cleanly and quickly. When sodium is running low, the pump has less to work with, and signal transmission, The actual electrical basis of a fast reaction, a clear thought, a quick response, gets very slightly, but measurably, slower. Research on mild dehydration has repeatedly found small but real drops in reaction time, working memory, and mood, even at fluid losses as low as 1 to 2% of body weight, a range easily reached by a normal night's sleep. Well-hydrated neurons fire fast. Mildly dehydrated ones fire late. Reason number 4 is the one almost nobody talks about. Your stomach needs chloride, the other half of table salt, to make the acid that starts digesting your first meal. Specialized cells in your stomach lining, called parietal cells, pump chloride ions into your stomach to help produce hydrochloric acid. Show up underhydrated and low on electrolytes, and that process has less raw material to draw from. Weak stomach acid does not just mean sluggish digestion. It means the proteins in your breakfast get broken down less efficiently, and some of the energy you are expecting from that meal simply does not get extracted as well. Get your electrolytes in order before you eat, and you are not just fixing your hydration. You are prepping the exact chemistry your first meal is about to need. Before you try this yourself, let us cover where people usually get it wrong. Mistake number 1. Using too much salt. More sodium is not better here. Past a small amount, you are not improving absorption, you are just adding unnecessary sodium load and making the water hard to drink. A quarter teaspoon in about 300 milliliters of water is plenty for most people to start with. Mistake number 2. Skipping the sugar entirely. Salt without any glucose alongside it does not activate that SGLT1 co-transport system nearly as well. You do not need much. A small squeeze of citrus or a teaspoon of honey is enough to make the mechanism actually work the way it is designed to. Mistake number 3. Assuming exotic salt matters more than plain salt. Himalayan salt gets marketed hard on its trace minerals, but the amounts involved are too small to meaningfully affect your physiology. What your gut and your cells actually need is the sodium ion itself. Plain table salt supplies that just as well. Mistake number 4. Treating this as a replacement for hydrating the rest of your day. This is one glass, first thing in the morning, addressing one specific overnight deficit. It is not a substitute for drinking water throughout your day, and it is not a cure-all. Now, how to progress it properly. Start with a quarter teaspoon of salt in roughly 300 milliliters of water. Adjust slightly to taste over the first week. Some people find a small increase feels better. Most do not need to go higher. Drink it before coffee, before food, ideally within the first 10 minutes of waking. And track something simple, an energy score out of 10, or just your usual mid-morning crash, for at least 2 weeks before you decide whether it is doing anything for you. One safety note that actually matters. If you have high blood pressure, kidney disease, heart failure, or you are on a sodium-restricted diet for any medical reason, talk to your doctor before adding regular sodium intake to your routine, even a small amount. This mechanism is real, but so is the risk of extra sodium for certain conditions, and no video script overrides that. Here is the bigger picture this connects to. Your gut does not just digest food quietly on its own. It is in constant conversation with your brain through the vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in your body, running from your brainstem down through your chest and into your abdomen, carrying signals in both directions between your gut and your central nervous system. A large share of those signals are efferent, running from gut to brain, not brain to gut, and they carry information about things like tension, osmotic balance, and the general state of your intestinal environment. When you are mildly dehydrated morning after morning, your gut is sending a steady, low-grade signal up that nerve that something is slightly off, even if you never consciously register it as thirst. Layer that on top of a cortisol system already ramping up for the day, and a nervous system spending extra energy just keeping its sodium-potassium pumps running with less to work with, and you get a body that is technically functioning, but running with more background static than it needs to. Researchers studying mild, everyday dehydration, including work out of the University of Connecticut's Human Performance Laboratory under Lawrence Armstrong, have repeatedly found measurable effects on mood and alertness at fluid losses most people would never think to call dehydrated. Not dramatic, not dangerous. Just quietly, consistently there. Fix the sodium and fluid balance first thing, and you are not just addressing one glass of water. You are turning down that background static before your day even starts. So here's the whole protocol, distilled down. Step 1. As soon as you wake up, before coffee, before food, mix about 300 milliliters of water with a quarter teaspoon of salt. Step 2. Add a small glucose source, a squeeze of orange or lemon, a teaspoon of honey, even a splash of juice. Step 3. Drink it over a few minutes, not in one gulp. Step 4. Wait 15 to 20 minutes before your coffee, so you are not layering caffeine's dehydrating effect on top of a system that has not finished absorbing yet. Step 5. Track your energy for 2 weeks before you judge whether it is working. Let us compress everything we covered. Faster cellular hydration through SGLT1. Less cardiovascular strain getting upright. Cleaner, faster nerve firing through the sodium-potassium pump. Better stomach acid production for your first meal. A calmer signal running up your vagus nerve all morning. That is the whole list. If you have got high blood pressure, kidney disease, or you are on a sodium-restricted diet, check with your doctor first. The mechanism is real, but so are the exceptions. If this helped make sense of your mornings, hit like and subscribe to Feynman Decoded. This channel exists to find the actual hidden mechanism behind the things that work, not just the trend. Drop a comment and tell me what your energy looked like after 2 weeks. And send this to the one person in your life who is convinced their tiredness is just who they are, a parent who has been dragging through mornings for years, a friend who lives on 4 coffees a day, whoever comes to mind first. Your cells have been running this pump since the moment you were born. All they are asking for, every morning, is a little help getting the raw material back.